Do you ever notice that nativity scenes always have a deer in them?
Ever wonder what that deer might taste like?
Oh dear.
We're having venison. In early translations of the Bible, the term venison is used for the Hebrew word seidah, which just referred to any wild game including gazelles, antelope, and even giraffe. We don't know which one of these Isaac ate exactly, but we do know that he loved it so much that he mixed up his sons. Also, he was blind by then, and that certainly didn't help. In Jesus' day, meats like seidah and even beef were typically reserved for the upper echelons of society, us commoners subsisting on goats, sheep, and locusts. When both Matthew and Zacchaeus held banquets for Jesus, I'd imagine venison was somewhere on the menu considering they, being tax collectors, probably had a lot of money. In fact, Zacchaeus is described as being wealthy, presumably by leaving others shortchanged. Currently at over $30 a pound of backstrap, it's still kinda pricey.
Might be cheaper in an area that sounds like this, but we're in SoCal and deer's expensive or whatever.
Let's start with some turmeric rice. Finely dice half an onion and 2 to 3 garlic cloves. Get reminded of your general clumsiness, then heat up your pot before adding 2 teaspoons of olive oil. I like using tempered borosilicate glass so I can see how things are cooking and also be pedantic. Add the onions and garlic and saute just until translucent. You don't want too much color or your rice will look like you just picked it off the ground. Next, 2 cups of long grain basmati. Then a tablespoon of turmeric powder and stir it in. Once everything is well coated and slightly toasted, add a teaspoon and a half of salt, try not to get too excited. Some fresh ground pepper and 2 cups of chicken or vegetable stock. Stir it around as Tudor gets in for a tighter shot. Then add a bay leaf despite the fact that after years of cooking, you still have no idea what it does. Let it simmer, covered for about 20 minutes, stirring often so the bottom doesn't burn too much. Once you're happy with the texture, finish it off with some butter. Tempered glass holds heat pretty well, so you can leave this covered in a warm spot somewhere while we work on the rest. Pistachio herb crust. First, grab a heavy-duty Ziploc bag and pour in a cup of shelled pistachios. Seal it shut and start crushing them with whatever you have on hand. I suppose you could also use a food processor if you like your neighbors. Empty that into a mortar and pestle and finally chop a handful of parsley and a handful of basil. Quick pro tip, when chopping any leafy herb, first combine them in a tight bundle, tuck your fingertips under, and chop using your knuckles as a guide. Then get it finer with a little rock and chop action. Once that's in the mortar, add a tablespoon of salt, a little olive oil, and then pretend the Industrial Revolution never happened. This is how Jesus would have done it, and if it's good enough for him, it's good enough for me. Add a cup of panko and combine with a fork until it looks like this. Kinda like couscous, except you'll actually want to eat it. Sharpen your knives, cause it's venison times. Start by removing the silver skin with a very sharp fillet knife. No matter what you do, no matter how you cook it, silver skin never breaks down. They should make tires out of this stuff. Then with a chef's knife, portion out the venison. I'm cutting 4 8-ouncers. Move them to a shallow plate, liberally season all sides with salt and pepper, and we're ready to pre-sear. Heat up a cast iron pan and add some olive oil. Drop in some fresh rosemary and thyme, a whole half onion, and 3 or 4 cloves of garlic, also whole but lightly crushed. Let them get to know each other before placing your cuts. Then add just a little bit of butter, cause you're trying to stay healthy, especially this year, and but what's this? Oh no. Pre-searing develops flavor by the Maillard reaction and leaves some delicious fond for a pan sauce later. Get to basting once the butter is melted. Position the cuts to the edge of the pan to sear the sides and continue basting. That should only take about 2 to 3 minutes, then transfer them onto a clean tray. The outside should be nicely browned, but the inside still completely raw. Slather them everywhere with some whole grain Dijon while they're still hot. Grab another tray and pour the breading out in an even layer. I'm only adding this shot because it looks cool. Roll the venison in the not couscous. The mustard will let it stick, but you could always help it along. Grab a parchmented baking tray, not a real term, and place your cuts on, topping them off as need be. That goes into a preheated 400-degree oven. 12 minutes for rare, 15 for medium rare. If you like your meat cooked beyond that, I don't know, eat cube steak. 12 to 15 minutes is just enough time to make our blackberry butter sauce. Cut a lemon in half and squeeze through your fingers to catch any seeds before throwing the whole thing in there. Deglaze with some chicken or veg stock and about a cup of blackberry wine. This is the brand I got. There might be better, there might be worse. All I know is this was the only one at the store. Then a cup of fresh blackberries. Smush and break up the blackberries and make them suffer in the heat so they release all their goodness within. Theologians might call this process sanctification. Once it's reduced by half, add a bunch of butter batter and chase it around like you did that acting career in college. Swirl it, lifting up the fond underneath until fully melted and incorporated. You'll know your sauce is thick enough when you run a spoon through it and it parts easily. Plus, we don't have to wander the desert for 40 years, I hope. Take out some of the larger pieces and attempt to strain into a pouring cup before deciding it's far more intelligent to use a bowl first. Strain it, making sure to get as much through and then transfer to a pouring cup. You know, like you know what you're doing. When your timer starts yelling, take the venison out and let them rest for about 10 minutes. In the meantime, whipped lemon goat cheese. It's kinda silly even showing this considering the name is the recipe, but here goes. Goat cheese, lemon juice, whipped lemon goat cheese. Let's plate. Some rice, the venison, goat cheese, and drizzle the sauce. You ain't got time for pretty food, you know, you got kids and a mortgage and that's your fault, but I get it, this is perfectly fine. But say you want to get a little fancy. Start with a ring mold and spoon the rice in. Press down from the top to compress it into shape and gently slide the ring mold off. Start trimming the ends of the venison before our father teaches you a little something about hubris. Then contemplate whether the people of Babel felt equally as stupid. Redo your work now that you know who's actually in charge and finish trimming the venison. Slice it down the middle to show that beautiful medium rare. Then some coral lace twills. Dead simple garnish to make, plenty of recipes online. Place them between the rice and the meat. When I think deer, I think forest, and coral twills kinda look like root systems or tree canopies. Next, squeeze little dollops of goat cheese with a piping bag. Then add some fresh blackberries. Sauce it up wherever you'd like and finish with some microgreens. I'm using clovers. And there's my pistachio herb crusted venison with blackberry butter sauce, turmeric rice, and whipped lemon goat cheese.
Okay, well. Alright, here we go. Let me just knock over this.
Yeah, just completely destroy all my work.
Get some of that goat cheese on there. I'm like exploring the venison. Because initially I was like, oh, it's beef. And I put it in my mouth and I was like, wait, no, it's not. Hold on, let me get a little deeper into this. Cut's great, really easy. Texture superb.
That's venison, bro.
And the pistachio is soft. It almost reminds me of the texture of stuffing.
Let's see how this turned out. Oh, dude, that's perfect medium rare. Dude, that's so good.
Yeah,
So good, dude.
get my hand involved.
Yeah, how do you like the coral?
It's fun. Let me try it without goat cheese. Because I've been lobbing on goat cheese and that's kind of a strong flavor.
Yeah.
That's really good, Daniel. Camera, no camera. That's good, bud. And because you cooked it in butter with garlic and added herbs, the flavor of the meat, it's not gamey.
Yeah, it got rid of a lot of that sort of slightly off-putting flavor. What do you think of the sauce?
We're about to find out, bro. It's not too sweet.
No,
It's the essence of blackberry.
absolutely. Venison loin has very, very little fat, which also helps with that gaminess. But the texture of this is just, I mean, it's crazy soft. Like, it's remarkably soft. Is autofocus on that thing? I don't know. Can people see that?
No.
It tastes expensive. Do you know what I mean by that? Like, it tastes like
The quality of the meat.
Like, you would find this on a menu without prices on it. How are we gonna close this episode, bro? Gotta leave them with something.
If you ever find yourself able to eat deer meat, I suggest you do it.
Deer meat's good. You have no idea what you're missing out on. Deer meat is good. You have no idea what you're missing out on. Right, dudes?